The stars beyond the palace windows glimmered like scattered diamonds against the endless black of space. Queen Jara stood alone in the royal genitarium, her crystalline form casting prismatic reflections across the chamber's white walls. Her six-fingered hands pressed against the transparent surface of an incubation pod, and her large, opalescent eyes stared at the tiny form floating inside. It was dying, just like the others. She moved to the next pod, then the next, her footsteps silent on the polished floor. Row after row of pods stretched before her, and in each one, a small Valorian life struggled and failed. Out of 100 pods, perhaps one would survive. Perhaps, Your Majesty, a voice called from the entrance. Jara straightened immediately, her face becoming smooth and emotionless. She turned to see Ambassador Trell, her chief advisor, standing in the doorway with a human beside him. The human scientist from Earth has arrived, Trell said, his tone formal and controlled, as all Valorians spoke. The human was small compared to Jara's 7-foot frame. She had dark hair tied back, warm brown skin, and curious dark eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. She wore a simple blue uniform with a name patch that read, Dr. Sarah Chen. Your Majesty, Sarah said, bowing slightly. Her voice carried an unusual quality. It moved up and down with something Jara couldn't quite identify. Emotion. Perhaps. Humans were known for that. Dr. Chen. Jara acknowledged with a slight nod. Welcome to Valoria Prime. Ambassador Trell will show you to your quarters and provide access to our cultural archives. Thank you, Your Majesty. I'm honored to be here. Sarah smiled, an expression that made her face transform completely. Valorians did not smile. They had no need for such displays. Trell led the human away, and Jara returned her attention to the failing pods. She reached out and placed her hand on another transparent surface. The tiny being inside twitched once, then went still. Another one lost. 347 years she had ruled. 347 years of watching her people slowly disappear. The Valorian Empire had once numbered in the billions, spreading across 1,000 star systems. Now, barely 20 million remained, scattered across their worlds like fading echoes of a once great symphony. The genetic plague had come without warning 3 generations ago. It attacked the neural pathways that allowed Valorians to bond the sacred connection that created new life. Without bonding, there could be no natural reproduction. Their scientists had developed artificial gestation pods, but the technology was imperfect and growing worse with each passing year. Jara was the last queen who still remembered what bonding felt like. She had lost her mate, Krill, 30 years ago when their final bonding attempt failed. The grief had killed him. Since then, she had been alone. She pressed her forehead against the cool surface of a pod and closed her eyes. Your Majesty? Jara's eyes snapped open. The human stood in the doorway. Alone this time. Dr. Chen's expression had changed. Concern filled her features. Ambassador Trell said you were in the throne room, Sarah said quietly. I got lost. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to intrude. It is nothing, Jara said, turning away quickly. You should return to Zalin. Are those babies? Sarah interrupted, stepping forward. Her eyes widened as she looked at the rows of pods. My God, there are so many. Jara said nothing. Humans were not supposed to see this place. No outsiders were. The shame of Valoria's decline was kept hidden from the galaxy. Other species would see them as weak, vulnerable. Some might even attack. Sarah walked closer to one of the pods, her face inches from the glass. This one. It's not moving properly, is it? The readings on this display. She pointed to the symbols on the pod's control panel. I don't read Valorian well yet, but these numbers are dropping. You should leave, Jara said, her voice harder now. Why are so many of them dying? Sarah asked, turning to face the queen. What's happening here? The words stuck in Jara's throat. For 3 centuries, she had maintained perfect control. A queen must be strong. A queen must be certain. A queen must never show weakness. But standing there, surrounded by failing pods and dying children. Facing this small human with concerned eyes, something inside Jara cracked. "We are dying," she whispered. The words came out broken, wrong. "All of us." Sarah's eyes widened. "What?" 3 generations ago, a genetic plague destroyed our ability to reproduce naturally. These pods, Zara gestured weakly at the rows around them, are all we have left. But they fail more with each year. 1 in 100 survives now. Soon it will be 1 in 1,000. Then none. "How long?" Sarah asked softly. "Our scientists estimate 200 years until the last Valorian dies." The silence stretched between them. Sarah looked at the pods again, then back at Jara. The human's eyes were wet tears. Jara recognized. Humans cried when they felt strong emotions. "Does the galaxy know?" Sarah asked. "No. And you must not tell them. Promise me." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she stepped closer. "Your Majesty, I'm a xenobiologist. I study alien reproduction and genetics. Maybe I could help?" "Our greatest minds have tried for 70 years, Jara said. "What could one human do?" Sarah looked around the genetarium, at the failing pods, at the dying children. Then she looked at Jara with an expression the Queen had never seen before, determination mixed with something warm, something fierce. "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "But sometimes an outside perspective sees what others miss. And sometimes—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Sometimes problems that seem purely scientific have other solutions, human solutions." Jara studied the small human before her. Logic said this was pointless. Logic said hope was for fools. Logic said a species that reproduced as chaotically as humans with emotions and mess and unpredictability could never understand Valorian biology. But logic had already failed her people. "Very well, Dr. Chen," Jara said quietly. "Show me these human solutions." Sarah stood in the Valorian research laboratory, surrounded by scientists whose crystalline forms towered over her. They watched her with expressions that revealed nothing, no curiosity, no hope, no skepticism, just blank observation. Chief Scientist Vexlar projected a holographic display into the air between them. Complex genetic sequences spiraled and twisted, showing patterns that hurt Sarah's eyes to follow. "This is the plague," Vexlar explained, his voice flat and precise. "It destroyed the neural pathways in Sector 7 of our brain structure. These pathways enable harmonic resonance, the process by which 2 Valorians merge consciousness temporarily to create new life." Sarah leaned forward, studying the data. "Merge consciousness? You mean you have to mentally connect to reproduce?" "Correct," Vexlar said. 2 compatible Valorians enter a bonding chamber. They synchronize their neural frequencies until their minds touch. In that moment of perfect harmony, genetic material combines, and new life begins. The process takes approximately 4 hours. And the plague made this impossible? Yes. The pathways are destroyed. Without them, resonance cannot occur. We have attempted genetic repair, neural regeneration, synthetic pathway construction. Vexlar gestured at the screens around them. 70 years of failure. Sarah walked around the hologram, viewing it from different angles. The other scientists watched her in silence. She could feel their doubt radiating like cold air. "Can I ask a strange question?" Sarah said finally. "Proceed," Vexlar replied. "When you bond with someone, what does it feel like?" The scientists exchanged glances. Vexlar tilted his head. "Feel? It is a neural synchronization event. There is no feeling involved. But there must be something," Sarah pressed. "Some sensation, some experience. Humans describe conception and pregnancy with all kinds of emotions. Love, fear, joy, anticipation. What do Valorians experience?" Vexlar was silent for a moment. "Our records indicate that ancient Valorians reported sensations during bonding. Warmth, connection, unity. But these are inefficient descriptions. Modern Valorians eliminated such imprecise language 400 years ago. Eliminated? Sarah repeated. You mean you stopped feeling them? Or you stopped talking about them? Emotions are inefficient, another scientist, Relmara, said. They cloud judgment. They waste processing capacity. We evolved beyond them. Sarah turned to face them all. But you haven't evolved beyond needing to reproduce. And if reproduction requires this bonding, this connection between two minds, maybe the problem isn't genetic. Maybe it's emotional. The room went completely silent. That is illogical, Vexlar said flatly. Emotions are chemical responses. They serve no function in genetic transfer. In humans, they serve every function. Sarah countered. She pulled up her data pad and projected her own images into the air scans of human brains during different activities. Look at this. This is a human mother's brain when she sees her baby. These areas light up connection, bonding, protective instinct. And this. She switched images. This is two humans falling in love. Similar patterns, right? Now this, another image appeared. This is a human woman during conception. See how all these areas activate together? Emotion, connection, physical response, they're all linked. Humans are primitive, Relmara said dismissively. You still require emotions to function. We do not. Then why are you dying? Sarah asked quietly. The question hung in the air like a challenge. None of the scientists answered. Sarah continued, her voice gentle but firm. You said ancient Valorians experienced feelings during bonding. What if those feelings weren't just side effects? What if they were part of the process? What if, by eliminating emotions, you eliminated something essential? Impossible, Vexlar said. We have analyzed every aspect of bonding. It is purely neural. Have you analyzed it with emotions present? Sarah asked. There are no emotions present. That is the point. Sarah closed her eyes, thinking. When she opened them, she looked at each scientist in turn. I need to speak with Queen Jara. Alone. 2 hours later, Sarah sat with Jara in the Queen's private chambers. The room was beautiful but cold, all crystalline surfaces and precise angles. No warmth, no personality, no life. Your scientists think I'm crazy, Sarah said. They believe you are wasting time, Jara replied. As do I, perhaps. But we have tried everything else. She paused. Tell me your theory. Sarah took a deep breath. Your Majesty, tell me about your mate. Creel. Jara's expression flickered just for a second. Something crossed her face. Pain. Maybe. But it vanished immediately. What does that have to do with genetics? Everything, I think. You said the grief killed him after your last failed bonding. That means he felt something. Deep enough to die from it. It was neural shock, Jara said, but her voice wavered slightly. Was it? Sarah asked gently. Or was it a broken heart? Jara stood abruptly and walked to the window. For a long time, she said nothing. Sarah waited. I remember, Jara finally whispered. The first time we bonded. 300 years ago. Before the plague. There was warmth. Like sunlight filling my mind. I felt him, his thoughts, his essence, him. We were separate but together. It was. She stopped. Beautiful? Sarah offered. Yes, Jara admitted. But that word is imprecise, inefficient. It's human, Sarah said. And maybe that's what you need right now. Your Majesty, I think bonding requires more than neural pathways. I think it requires vulnerability, openness, the willingness to let someone else into your mind and heart. And I think your people forgot how to do that. We eliminated such weaknesses on purpose, Jara said. What if they weren't weaknesses? Sarah stood and joined her at the window. Humans survived ice ages, plagues, wars, disasters, not because we're strong or smart or logical. We survived because we love each other, because we connect, because we refuse to face the darkness alone. She turned to face the Queen. Maybe Valorians need to remember that too. Jara looked down at the human beside her. You are suggesting I relearn emotions? After 3 centuries of controlling them? I'm suggesting you let yourself feel again, Sarah said. Not just think. Feel. Grieve for Corel. Hope for your people. Fear the future. And then, when you're ready, try bonding again. But this time, don't just synchronize your neural frequencies. Open your heart. That is terrifying, Jara whispered. Sarah smiled sadly. Yes, love usually is. The queen stared out at the stars, silent and still. Finally, she spoke. Teach me, Dr. Chen. Teach me how to feel again. 3 weeks had passed since Sarah began working with Queen Jara. The palace staff noticed changes in their queen's small things at first, but growing more obvious each day. She paused to look at flowers now. She asked questions about people's lives. Sometimes, when she thought no one was watching, her face would shift into expressions they had never seen before. Sarah sat with Jara in a private garden, one of the few places on Valoria Prime where living plants still grew. The queen touched a purple petal with one crystalline finger, her movement gentle and careful. On Earth, mothers sing to their babies, Sarah said softly. Even before they're born. We tell them stories. We talk about the future. About all the things we'll teach them and show them. Why? Jara asked. The infant cannot understand language yet. It's not about understanding, Sarah explained. It's about connection. About letting the baby know they're wanted. They're loved. They're not alone. She pulled out her datapad and played a recording. A woman's voice filled the garden, singing a gentle melody without words, just pure sound. Warm and comforting. Jara listened, her eyes closing. When the recording ended, she opened them again. They were brighter than before, catching the light differently. I feel something, Jara whispered. In my chest. It is. Heavy but not unpleasant. That might be emotion, Sarah said with a small smile. Humans would call it being moved or touched. It means something reached past your thoughts and into your heart. We do not have hearts like humans, Jara said. Everyone has hearts, Your Majesty. They just beat differently. Over the following days, Sarah showed Jara human art paintings of mothers holding children, sculptures of families, photographs of births and first steps and bedtime stories. She shared videos of Earth's animals caring for their young. She read poetry about love and loss and hope. Jara absorbed it all like someone discovering water after years of thirst. Tell me about your mother, Jara said one evening as they walked through the empty halls of the palace. Sarah smiled at the memory. She was fierce, protective. She worked 2 jobs to put me through university, and she never once complained. When I told her I wanted to study alien biology, she didn't understand it at all, but she supported me anyway. She died 5 years ago. You still grieve, Jara observed. Every day, Sarah admitted. But it doesn't hurt the way it used to. Now the grief is mixed with gratitude. I'm sad she's gone, but I'm grateful I had her at all. She looked at Jara. Do you still grieve for Krell? Jara stopped walking. For a long moment, she stood perfectly still. Then, slowly, she nodded. Yes, she said, and her voice cracked on the word. I have grieved every day for 30 years, but I told myself it was neural disruption, biological response, chemical imbalance, anything but what it truly was. She looked at Sarah, and for the first time, tears formed in her opalescent eyes. I loved him. I still love him, and I am broken without him. The tears fell. Crystal drops that caught the light as they rolled down her face. Sarah stepped forward and did something no one had ever done to the Queen of Valoria. She wrapped her arms around her in a hug. Jara stiffened at first, confused by the gesture. Then, slowly, she relaxed. Her own arms came up, wrapping around Sarah's smaller frame, and she wept great, shaking sobs that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside, somewhere she had locked away for centuries. When the tears finally stopped, Jara pulled back, She looked different somehow, more alive, more present. I feel lighter, she said, wonderingly. That's what letting go does, Sarah said gently. You don't forget. You don't stop loving. But you make room for new things too. New hope. New possibilities. New life, Jara whispered. The Valorian High Council sat in their chamber, their expressions troubled. Ambassador Trell stood before them, his crystalline form rigid with concern. The Queen spends all her time with the human, Councillor Mixar said. She has delayed 3 diplomatic meetings. She sits in gardens. She cries. The human is corrupting her, another councillor added, making her weak, or making her remember what we lost, Trell said quietly. The other councillors turned to stare at him. I have observed the Queen closely these past weeks. She is not weaker. She is more present, more aware, more alive than she has been in decades. Emotion is weakness, Mixar insisted. Is it? Trell challenged. Then why are we dying? We eliminated emotions. We perfected logic. We became efficient and precise and controlled. And we lost the ability to create new life. Perhaps the two are connected. Before anyone could respond, the chamber doors opened. Jara entered, and every councillor stood immediately. But they stared in shock at what they saw. The Queen was smiling. Councillors, Jara said, her voice carrying a warmth they had never heard before. I have made a decision. Tomorrow, I will attempt bonding again. Silence filled the chamber. Your Majesty, Mixar said carefully, you have not attempted bonding since Corel. The risk. I know the risks, Xiara interrupted. I know I might fail. I know the neural shock could kill me, as it killed him. But Dr. Chen has taught me something important. Some things are worth the risk. Some things are worth being afraid for. Who will you bond with? Trell asked. Vareth has volunteered, Jara said. He is young, strong, and one of our few remaining males who still carries viable genetic material. More importantly, he is willing to try the human method to approach bonding not as a clinical procedure, but as an act of hope. This is madness, Mixar said. Perhaps, Jara agreed. But we have tried sanity for 70 years, and it has brought us only failure and death. Tomorrow, we try something different. Tomorrow, we try feeling. She turned and left the chamber, leaving the councillors in stunned silence. That night, Sarah found Jara standing alone in the bonding chamber. The room was circular, with a crystalline platform in the center. It looked cold and sterile, more like an operating room than a place where life began. Are you afraid? Sarah asked. Terrified, Jara admitted. Then she smiled that strange, new expression that transformed her face. But you taught me that fear means something matters. And this matters more than anything. You're going to be amazing, Sarah said. Trust yourself. Trust what you feel. Jara placed a hand on Sarah's shoulder. Whatever happens tomorrow. Thank you. You gave me back something I thought was lost forever. You gave me back myself. You always had it, Sarah said. You just needed permission to remember. As Sarah left the chamber, Jara looked at the platform where she would attempt the impossible. Tomorrow, she would risk everything. Tomorrow, she would try to feel her way to a miracle. The bonding chamber filled with soft light as dawn broke over Valoria Prime. Zara stood on one side of the crystalline platform, Vareth on the other. He was younger than her by nearly a century, his form gleaming silver blue in the morning light. Sarah watched from behind a transparent barrier with the medical team. Her heart pounded in her chest. She had pushed for this, encouraged it, believed it would work. But now, seeing Jara step onto the platform, doubt crept into her mind. What if she was wrong? What if this killed them both? Beginning neural synchronization, Chief Scientist Vexlar announced, his fingers moving across the control panel. Heart rates stabilizing, brainwave patterns initializing. Jara closed her eyes. She thought about everything Sarah had taught her. She thought about Krill, about love, about the children dying in the genitarium. She thought about hope. She let herself feel. Vareth's consciousness touched hers, gentle at first, like a whisper. In the old days, before the plague, she would have approached this clinically, mechanically, but now she opened herself completely, letting her feelings flow toward him. Fear, hope, longing, love for her people. She felt Vareth respond, his own emotions flooding back. Uncertainty, determination, and something else, a deep, aching desire to help his species survive. Their minds moved closer, intertwining like dancers learning each other's steps. Neural resonance increasing, Vexlar reported. His voice carried a note of surprise. Frequency match at 60%. 70%. This is unprecedented. The light in the chamber grew brighter. Jara and Vareth's forms began to shimmer as their consciousness merged deeper. She felt him completely now, his thoughts, his memories, his essence, and he felt her. Together, they were more than separate. They were complete. 95% synchronization. Vexlar breathed. Perfect harmonic resonance achieved. The bonding is successful. 6. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. It was working. It was actually working. The light exploded outward in a brilliant flash, then faded. Jara and Vareth stood motionless on the platform, their eyes still closed. Then, slowly, they opened them. Jara looked at Vareth, and he looked back at her. No words were spoken, but something passed between them, gratitude, wonder, shared joy. It is done, Jara whispered. Then her legs gave out, and she collapsed to the platform. Your Majesty! Sarah rushed forward as the medical team surrounded Jara. Vareth had also fallen, unconscious but breathing. The doctors worked quickly, checking vital signs, scanning neural patterns. She's alive, one doctor announced. Both of them are. Just exhausted. The neural strain was enormous. They carried Jara to the medical wing. Sarah stayed by her side, holding the Queen's crystalline hand, watching her chest rise and fall with each breath. 3 hours later, Jara's eyes opened. Did it work? She asked immediately. Sarah smiled through her tears. Yes. You did it. The bonding was successful. Jara sat up slowly, looking down at herself. She placed a hand over her chest, where something new was beginning, a tiny spark of life, growing inside her. She could feel it, sense it, know it in a way she never had before. I can feel the child, she whispered in wonder. Not just know that it exists, I can feel it. Like a warmth, a presence, a promise. You're going to be a mother, Sarah said softly. Jara looked at her, tears streaming down her face, but these were tears of joy. I am going to be a mother, she repeated, as if testing the words. Then she laughed, a sound of pure happiness that rang through the medical wing. Word spread across Valoria Prime within hours. The Queen had successfully bonded. New life was growing. For the first time in 3 generations, hope bloomed among the Valorian people, but not everyone celebrated. In a secure military facility far from the capital, General Caxier met with other high-ranking officers. Their faces were grim. The Queen has been compromised, Caxier said flatly. The human infected her with emotional weakness. Now she weeps, laughs, and speaks of feelings like a primitive creature. The bonding worked. Another officer pointed out. We have confirmation. A child grows. At what cost? Caxier demanded. We built our empire on logic, efficiency, and strength. Emotions make us vulnerable. If our people embrace this human way, we will become weak. Our enemies will destroy us. What do you propose? Asked Commander Rilvan. Caxier's expression hardened. We remove the Queen and the human. We return to the old methods. Better to die with dignity than survive as emotional weaklings. That is treason, Rilvan said quietly. That is salvation, Caxier corrected. and those loyal to true Valorian strength will follow me." 2 weeks later, Sarah walked through the palace gardens with Jara. The queen glowed with health, her form more vibrant than Sarah had ever seen it. The child growing inside her was strong and healthy. The scans showed perfect development. 16 more Valorians have successfully bonded using your methods, Jara said happily. 16 new children will be born. The scientists are astonished. They are beginning to understand what you tried to tell them, that reproduction is not just mechanics. It requires connection, vulnerability, love. "I'm so happy for you," Sarah said sincerely. "For all of you. We owe you everything," Jara said. She stopped walking and turned to face Sarah. "You will be honored forever in Valorian history as the human who saved us." Before Sarah could respond, an explosion rocked the palace grounds. Armed Valorian soldiers appeared from multiple directions, surrounding them. At their head stood General Caxir, his expression cold and determined. "Queen Jara," he announced formally, "by the authority of the Preservation Council, you are removed from power. Your emotional corruption threatens Valorian survival." "Caxir, what are you doing?" Jara demanded, stepping in front of Sarah protectively. "Saving our people from weakness," Caxir replied. He gestured, and 2 soldiers grabbed Sarah, pulling her away from Jara despite her struggles. "Let her go," Jara commanded, her voice ringing with authority. "The human will be detained," Caxir said. "She will be tried for cultural contamination and sentenced accordingly. As for you, Your Majesty, you will be placed in isolation until the emotional infection fades. Then we will resume proper Valorian methods." "You're insane," Sarah shouted as the soldiers dragged her backward. "The bonding worked. New life is growing. You can't stop progress." "We can stop weakness," Caxir said coldly. "And we will." Jara watched as they took Sarah away, watched as more soldiers surrounded her, watched as everything she had worked for began to crumble. For a moment, the old Jara would have calculated odds, assessed options, approached this logically. But the new Jara, the mother Jara, the feeling Jara, felt something else entirely. Rage. She thought of her child, of the 16 other children growing in their mothers, of Sarah's kindness and courage, of the future they had fought so hard to create. And she made a choice. "No," Jara said quietly. Then louder. "No." Her form blazed with light as she stepped forward. The battle for Valoria's future had begun. Sarah sat in a cold detention cell, her hands gripping the transparent barrier that separated her from freedom. Through the walls, she could hear distant sounds shouting, movement, the hum of energy weapons charging. The palace was in chaos. A Valorian guard stood outside her cell, his expression neutral. Sarah had tried talking to him, reasoning with him, but he remained silent and still. "Please," Sarah said again. "Whatever General Caxir told you, it's wrong. The queen isn't weak, she's stronger than she's ever been. She's saving your species." The guard said nothing. Then, suddenly, the lights flickered. An alarm began to wail through the facility. The guard's communication device crackled to life with urgent voices. "All units to the central plaza. The Queen is broadcasting empire-wide." The guard hesitated, then ran toward the commotion, leaving Sarah alone. She pressed against the barrier, trying to see what was happening outside. In the central plaza of Valoria Prime, Jara stood on a raised platform. Thousands of Valorians had gathered below, and across every world in the Empire, citizens watched on their communication screens. General Caxir's soldiers surrounded the plaza, weapons ready, but they had not fired yet. Caxir himself stood at the base of the platform, his face twisted with fury. "Your Majesty, step down. This broadcast is illegal. You have been removed from power." Jara ignored him. She looked out at her people, at their confused and frightened faces. She placed one hand over her chest, where her child grew, and she began to speak. "My people," she said, her voice carrying across the plaza and to every corner of the empire. "I stand before you not as the queen you have always known, But as someone new, someone changed, and I am not ashamed of that change. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. For 70 years, we have watched our species die, Zara continued. We have tried logic, science, efficiency, everything that made us great. And we have failed. Do you know why? She paused, letting the question hang in the air. We failed because we forgot what it means to truly live. We eliminated emotions because we thought they made us weak. We removed love, joy, grief, fear, all the messy, complicated feelings that make life rich and full. And in doing so, we eliminated our ability to create new life. Emotions are weakness, Caxier shouted from below. They cloud judgment. They make us vulnerable. Jara looked down at him, and when she spoke, her voice was gentle, but firm. I once believed that too, General. I spent 3 centuries controlling my feelings, suppressing them, pretending they did not exist. And I was not strong, I was empty. I was a hollow shell pretending to be a queen. She turned back to the crowd. Then a human came to us. Dr. Sarah Chen taught me something I had forgotten, that strength and feeling are not opposites. They are partners. She taught me to grieve for my lost mate, to hope for the future, to fear failure, and to love again. Tears streamed down Jara's face now, catching the light like diamonds. And because I learned to feel, I was able to bond. Because I opened my heart, new life began to grow inside me. She placed both hands on her chest. I am carrying a child, a real, living, healthy child conceived naturally for the first time in 3 generations. And I am not the only one. 16 other Valorians have successfully bonded using the human methods. 16 more children will be born. The crowd's murmuring grew louder. Some faces showed hope, others confusion, others anger. General Caxier says emotions make us weak, Jara said. But I ask you, what is weaker? To feel love for our children? Or to watch them die without caring? To hope for a future? Or to accept extinction with cold indifference? To be vulnerable? Or to be so protected that nothing can touch us, including life itself? She stepped closer to the edge of the platform, her voice rising with passion. I was not weak when I stood alone and emotionless. I was weak when I had no one to be strong for. But now I carry my daughter, and I would fight armies for her. I would move stars for her. I would do anything to give her a chance at life. Is that weakness? Or is that the strongest thing a person can be? Silence fell over the plaza. Even Caxier had gone still, his expression uncertain. I am not asking you to abandon logic, Jara said softly. I am asking you to remember that logic without heart is incomplete. We can be intelligent and emotional. We can be efficient and loving. We can be strong and vulnerable. These things are not contradictions, they are what makes us whole. She extended her hand toward the crowd. Choose, my people. Choose extinction with pride, or survival with feeling. Choose death with dignity, or life with love. But know this, I have already chosen. I choose my daughter. I choose hope. I choose to feel. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, a single Valorian began to clap the human gesture of approval that they had learned from watching Sarah's videos. Another joined, then another. The sound grew, spreading through the crowd like ripples on water. Caxier stared at his soldiers, but one by one, they lowered their weapons. Some were crying tears, running down crystalline faces that had been dry for generations. The general's shoulders slumped in defeat. What have we become? He whispered. Alive, Jara answered gently. We have become alive again. Sarah was released within the hour. She ran through the palace halls until she found Jara in the royal chambers, surrounded by advisors and well-wishers. When the queen saw her, she pushed through the crowd and pulled Sarah into an embrace. Human, Zara said, her voice shaking with emotion. I am a mother. Because of you. Sarah hugged her back, tears streaming down her own face. No, Your Majesty. You were always capable of this. I just reminded you. Jara pulled back, holding Sarah at arm's length. You gave my people back our future. But more than that, you taught us how to love again. Sarah smiled through her tears. Every species that survives does it the same way together, with hope and with love for what comes next. 6 months later, Sarah stood in the royal medical wing, watching as Jara held her newborn daughter for the first time. The infant was perfect, her crystalline form glowing with health and vitality, her small eyes blinking up at her mother with curiosity. What will you name her? Sarah asked softly. Jara looked down at her daughter, then at Sarah. Sarah, she said. Her name is Sarah, so that every generation of Valorians will remember the human who taught us that the bravest thing anyone can do is feel. The baby Sarah made a small sound, not quite a cry, more like a coo of contentment. And in that moment, surrounded by new life and new hope, the future of the Valorian Empire began, not with logic alone, but with love, not with strength alone, but with vulnerability, not with isolation, but with connection. And across the empire, in homes and hospitals and bonding chambers, more children were being born, each one a testament to the power of opening one's heart. The Valorians had learned that survival was not about being invulnerable. It was about caring enough to be hurt, hoping enough to risk disappointment, and loving enough to fight for tomorrow. They had learned to feel, and in feeling, they had learned to live. The end.